So I've been reading this book by Bruno Latour called "We Have Never Been Modern," and it kind of dovetails with a comment I made on my last video about the modern ideology, although it kind of has a different emphasis. What Latour is concerned with is what he calls the modern constitution, by which he means sort of this modern ideology, specifically as it has to do with the sort of sharp division between nature and culture, or something between subjects and objects, so to speak. That society is the sort of subjective. It is composed of subjects who construct their environment, and it's malleable and based on our free decisions. And then on the other hand, there's nature, which is objective, is physical and studied by science, which doesn't construct anything but merely consults nature, so to speak, and then gives us these answers that, although this entity is mute, it nonetheless gives them direct answers and do not actually, that are simply where scientists simply transcribe these answers rather than constructing a conceptual framework for it and such. As to the degree that there is bad science, then it is science that is contaminated with social constructs and is being subjective. And so, I mean, in a sense, there's kind of the subline where everything that is true is objective and natural, where everything that's false is socially constructed. Contrast this with the sort of pre-modern view of these societies that are studied by anthropologists, where they have magic and ancestor spirits and taboos. What they don't have is a concept of nature, and that's because there is no division between nature and culture. To affect one is to affect another. If you violate some taboo, then it will have repercussions, for society, and will cause a drought or something like that. Similar, if you do something in nature, then it will it'll affect your society too. So, what he's critiquing with modernity, he's saying that the modern constitution, this idea that there exists these two categories of subject and object, has made it so that we can't have an anthropology of our own society. We have anthropologies of other societies where an ethnographer will write down and describe all the beliefs and practices that where politics and social relations and beliefs about the natural environment all kind of just blend together. What he's going to say is that actually this modern worldview, how we view ourselves in terms of nature and culture, is actually an illusion. That we actually have a society that is built up of all these different hybrids, we call it. He talks about Robert Boyle's vacuum tube. The idea that we would construct, the scientists will use lab equipment to construct these artificial environments with which to study what is supposed to be an objective phenomenon. So you could take a totally constructivist view of that and say that, that means that we can't really know anything at all because this is a constructive view. But of course, then the scientists will no, is actually giving us good results, and we're able to continue getting these results repeatedly, and it tells us something about this world outside of us. So this construct is merely a tool for getting at something that lies beyond those constructs. And so when we try to be like cultural relativists and say that, well, all these cultures have different beliefs about the natural world, but somehow nature itself never changes, and we always stick with the Western civilized view of nature, and then say that while all these other societies have these beliefs and practices about nature that are false. Basically, is that they have their own way of interpreting nature, versus if you want to be an extreme cultural relativist, you would say, well, then you might say that their views are no better than ours, and he wants to avoid that too. What he's going to say is that nature and culture are not. It's not that they aren't useful categories. It's just that we can't conceive them as, we have to see them as poles in a spectrum where modernity wants to put everything in one category or the other. He says the action is all in the middle, and he comes up with this idea called quasi objects, where every natural or physical object has a socially constructed aspect to it. Like, suppose a quark, for instance. Yeah, to my knowledge, science has never actually never actually observed a quark, but it's a model that we have for understanding the observations that we see when experiments in quantum mechanics are performed, and or particle physics or not, and so in that sense, it's a social construct. But on the other hand, we're also describing some sort of objective phenomenon that has a real effect on the world. Similarly, you look at some social phenomenon, like I don't know, religion is one that people always like to reduce to a social construct. It's also composed of real churches and temples and practices and institutions that have a very physical effect on us. Or law, for instance. Our society is composed of institutions, laws, technology, networks. So what he says is that we have this sort of, rather than giving two poles, nature and society, this sort of commensurability problem that has defined modernity. Instead, we can talk about networks that weave in and out of all these different parts of this middle ground. So he calls the middle kingdom of quasi objects, and so when we look at these pre-modern cultures, they have a network, what he calls a collective of what he calls this. Instead of talking about nature on the one, a single nature versus in multiple cultures, he talks about nature cultures. And the idea is, for a pre-modern society, they might have a nature culture that includes ancestor spirits and magic and taboos and fixed stars and all that. Whereas our collective includes quarks and quasars and laws and technology and internet and sports and all these different things that So the point is, our collective is vastly greater than these pre-modern collectives, these pre-modern networks, but it's a quantitative difference rather than a qualitative difference. It's not that we have the real nature, whereas these other societies have a sort of primitive attempt at understanding nature. No, we have a nature culture that is vastly more complex and therefore has greater explanatory power. And so in that way we can have a sort of anthropology of our own society that can both understand what the strengths of our society are without chauvinistically, seeing it as radically different from these other societies. And he points out also that these networks that we have, networks, he said, they're not planes. They don't have the kind of geometrical dimensions where there is a macro part. it says that a network is local at all levels. Like a railroad. There, at any point of a railroad, there is can it connect one end of Europe to another, but that still doesn't mean that you can go outside that railroad and still be part of that network. And so when scientists use some sort of lab equipment like a vacuum tube or something to study how things work in a vacuum, it's not that they're glancing into this objective reality, but rather they're connecting to a network of things in a vacuum, or how things behave in this particular environment that they've constructed. So the point is that by doing those kind of experiments, we expand the network, and they can connect to that network at those points, but that still doesn't mean they're connecting to things outside that network. They're not connecting to a plane of objectivity, but to a network of nature cultures. So I know that's a lot to try and explain in one video, but I hope I managed to get that point across somehow. I may elaborate on this in the future, but thanks for listening.